I want my president to be effective, regardless of whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. We all should want that, right? That really is what America's all about. History's not going to be kind to Donald Trump. The quicker we purge this, and look, if it means working with the other team, so be it. Let's do it, and let's do it well.
Former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan. He had a book out, GOP 2.0. I don't know. Are we there? We're pretty far away from GOP 2.0, but hope springs eternal, they say in baseball, right, Geoff Duncan?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think my experience in baseball has been if you lose enough, you finally figure out how to win again. And I think that's the spot we're at as Republicans. We're facing a dismal season, and it doesn't look like we've got our best players on the field right now as Republicans.
There we go. With the baseball reference. You're a AAA? You're a AAA man?
Yeah, rub it in a little bit. I spent 6 years beating it through the minor leagues, but I loved every minute of it except for Fridays when it was payday. But
that's not rubbing it in, man. I got cut from the sophomore basketball team in high school. Okay, so you made it a lot farther than I did. You had not bad. I mentioned at the top in yesterday's Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and here's the nuts of it. You wrote, "Unlike Trump, I've belonged to the GOP my entire life. This November, I'm voting for a decent person I disagree with on policy over a criminal defendant without a moral compass." This is the thing. I kind of feel like this should not be like that bold of a statement that you're going to vote against a criminal defendant without a moral compass. But unfortunately, you're standing out in this regard. So try to explain to me why you think that is. Why aren't there other folks that are echoing this sentiment from the former Republican elected class?
Yeah, let me set the table by saying it feels like my new motto is honesty is the new crazy, right? Just saying the honest, like calling honest balls and strikes seems to get the most attention these days. But yeah, look, Donald Trump has infiltrated the Republican Party as a fake Republican. There's nothing that he's really done. He's certainly a broken clock's right twice a day, and he stumbled into a few conservative policies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, he started this process not as a Republican, and nothing that we look at going forward is got Donald Trump, the Republican Party, as Donald Trump being our future. I think we almost all agree on that. But I think the problem that we face is folks, feel like we're victims of gravity, and our best chance to win is to get Donald Trump there. But our best chance to barely lose again is Donald Trump. I mean, if you really honestly evaluate all these elections, whether he's on the ballot or not, if he's a proxy to the ballot. I mean, we were supposed to have this massive majority in the House. It didn't happen. He was supposed to win in 2020. It didn't happen. Just time and time again, it continues to poke its head up. Donald Trump isn't enough to win, and we just haven't seemed to want to take our medicine because it doesn't taste very good, right? You got to do things like I just did. I mean, I'm getting certainly a lot of positive attaboys from folks that are really seeing this through the same lens I am, and I'm also getting a lot of really good friends who are Republicans like, how could you do this? And it's like, it's one of those parenting moments. It's like you care about your kid so much, you just feel like they need to take their medicine today instead of waiting a week for the infection to get worse.
Yeah, it's kind of implied there for people who are listening who might not be as familiar with you, though, just kind of stepping back. I mean, I was always kind of a rhino, all right? Like I was always pretty moderate Republican. It wasn't quite as big of a jump for me. That's not really true for you. Like you, in your book, like you're a traditionally conservative Republican. You were not really a never Trumper per se before, or not even per se. You weren't a never Trumper at all through 2016 and 2020. You supported him, and then you're there in Georgia on the front lines when all the craziness is happening. So just explain to kind of listeners what your worldview is, what you want out of politics, and why you found yourself still sticking with him through 2020. Because I think that there are a lot of people that also did that. I think it's important to hear from people who stuck with him through 2020 who are changing now, because we're going to need people who went on this or going on the same journey that you are.
Yeah. I'm, as I mentioned a minute ago, I'm conservative, but I'm not crazy or angry. And I think the biggest hijack of all that Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party is taken our tone and tenor. In my book, I write about this notion called my pet project: policy, empathy, and tone. I'm confident in conservative policies. I'm confident that in this election cycle, we could walk into most moderates and independents' houses and talk to them about conservative strategies around budgeting and foreign policy and border control and all of these ideas that are really, really big ideas, but do it in a way that talks about the policy, uses empathy just to understand the other side's take, and use a tone that encourages them to keep showing up and supporting you. Donald Trump has hijacked our tone so bad and just turned people into, unfortunately, paper tigers, social media warriors, and they're just full of what and vinegar when they sit around the water cooler, and it's just distorted this fact that I think that Ronald Reagan got it right when he said, with you 80% of the time, what are you, a friend and ally, not a 20% traitor? That's what we've lost, and that's what Donald Trump. It's all in, and it's unfortunate, and but I do think we can get back there. I want America to get addicted again to conservative policies, but not this just visceral, vile approach to it.
Yeah, I wonder though, has it given you any thought about whether there's some underlying issues that were there that were that Trump exposed? And I remember we talked. I forget if I was writing an article or for a book or something a while back, a couple of years ago. You talked about a moment in your office where you were kind of looking out at the protesters and realizing that these were people that were ostensibly on your side, on our side, and you kind of had a moment of clarity. And I just sort of wonder, does just the degree to which people have gone along with this make you think, man, I don't know, maybe I'm not actually on the same team as these people?
Yeah, that moment that we talked about is just so vivid in my mind. I mean, I was sitting in my office at the Capitol, post 2020 election, and there's armed guards with, automatic weapons outside my office, making sure that Republicans now, not any sort of, like foreign militia, but Republicans don't attack the Capitol because we wouldn't admit that the 2020 election was rigged, because actually it wasn't. And we knew that all the proof. But I think that the takeaway now, a few years removed, is just how vile and visceral Donald Trump has turned the Republican Party on its head on. Because up until that point, I was a rock solid conservative in their eyes, right? I was championing the heartbeat bill. I was championing other conservative policies. Brian Kemp and I were budgeting we had billions of dollars in our state savings account, unlike the federal government, unlike all of these other left-leaning spending policies and pathways. But yet on one issue, because Donald Trump said the election was rigged, they just walked off the plank with him. Death threats started showing up, all of that. It's not the Republican Party that's going to actually do anything. It's just going to be a bunch of bluster. And look, I think we have to be very specific about calling out Donald Trump on being a fake Republican, even down to the point where these documents are out there. I mean, how is he different than Hillary Clinton? Right? All of the Republicans pushed and
she accepted defeat.
Yeah, well, yeah,
so that's one way.
But as far as the documents go, I mean, it's Republicans spent billions of gallons of ink trying to express themselves that she was out, stealing state secrets and blah blah blah. Donald Trump's got two problems on his hands. Yes, he's got all these other cases, but the two problems on the documents case is, one, he had them. Okay, let's go figure out what he should have had, what he shouldn't have had. That's probably a complicated riddle. But then to unpack what he didn't disclose, what he tried to hide, what he tried to coerce. I mean, that's
another
probably
way is different than Hillary.
Yeah, that's the big issue. But yet, I mean, I just can't imagine us putting our stamp of approval as Republicans. But we are, and I'm acknowledging that. But that's part of my calculus here is, let's just take our medicine as quick as we can. Let's work with trying to have Republican majorities in Congress. Let's try to work with the Biden administration as much as possible to bring them back into the fold on immigration and foreign policy and inflationary levers that we can additionally pull. Let's work with them as much as we can over the 4 years, and then take our medicine and go do something different.
Yeah, I'm interested about that, about the Biden administration, because I feel like maybe you have a freedom to go back to calling balls and strikes. Maybe you have a freedom to call balls and strikes a little bit more than some others, since you've kind of made this endorsement. But I don't know. I look at the Biden administration. There are things they've done that I've disagreed with, of course. But I think there have been a lot of ways where he's resisted some of the stuff from the far left. They're not doing the Green New Deal. They didn't try to expand the Supreme Court. They didn't. A lot of the protesters out there on campuses everybody's upset about are shouting "fuck Joe Biden" right alongside the MAGA protesters. He hasn't given in to them. So in a lot of ways, I think he's resisted some of the worst impulses of the left. And yet I never hear anybody on the right give him any credit for that. I don't know. What do you think? Are there any positive elements to your Biden endorsement, or is it all anti-Trump?
No, it's certainly not anti-Trump. I mean, I believe him walking into the room. I believe him trying to build consensus. I think he's getting better. I think it started off as a serious hat tip to the far left when he first came into office. I do see a migration, towards the middle, slightly small steps ish. But let's break down. I think that part of this is a messaging issue. This election is going to come down to the suburbs, right? I live in the suburbs, right? I live in suburb America, 40 miles north of Atlanta. The suburbs are doing pretty well right now across America, right? I mean, everyone's house is probably worth more than it's ever been worth. Their 401ks are doing well. Whatever small business they work for or own is probably doing well. But there's all kinds of other components of the economy that aren't. But I think that message...
I'm sorry, I've been told it's American carnage out there, Lieutenant Governor. I've been told that the suburbs are being eradicated by these policies and that they're building multifamily homes out there. And, things are going to shit.
Yeah, there are multifamily homes coming because of this. I live in Forsyth County, Georgia. It's growing exponentially because we have the lowest property taxes of any metro county. We have the lowest crime rate and the best public schools. That's really the recipe to win. And my first job in politics was the state rep for this area, so I know those stats a little bit well. But to me, that's what we should get back to, trying to win these elections on these policies, right? I mean, we had a very legitimate argument against the Biden administration on their initial immigration efforts, right? It was awful, right? We were watching this, and it all came down to a sounding board where Joe Biden just basically said, we're going to do this thing a lot different than Donald Trump. And word got out to South America that we were going to do things different than Donald Trump. And so they started to flood the border and overwhelm the resources. So then we finally message enough and gallivant enough and put pressure and get the Biden administration through the Langford legislation. And then we balk at it because Donald Trump says, why are we going to give these guys a win? Why would we dare take this issue off the table? We need to dig in and not support this effort, where we should have been mature enough to take the deal and then remind everybody in America that deal happened because we kept constant, steady pressure on doing the right thing. And you apply that over and over and over and over again. We have micro-sized our aiming on these issues that literally go hour by hour by hour, and they're not doing anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that conservatives deserve some credit for agitating for more action on the border. It's gotten out of control. I think David Frum is very good on this. He's like, if liberals aren't going to control the border, then conservatives are. And I think a lot of liberals aren't going to like what they want to do. I also think, though, it's true. Like, it has to be true. The Democrats were all going to vote for that, right? There's this vision of the Democratic Party that gets put out among some, I assume in Georgia, some of the swing voters that Joe Biden's going to have to get. There's a vision of the Democrats that they're extreme, they're open borders. It's like John Lennon over there. And like, the Democrats were all going to vote for that deal. So, maybe it took some pressure, sure, but don't they get some credit? Doesn't it show that there's some pragmatism happening with Biden and that you can work with him? Isn't that a case that you can maybe make to people like you in Georgia that don't love Donald Trump, but are worried about the far left?
That's certainly what my hope is between now and November, whatever the election is, 4th or 5th, is to be able to inject opinions, not because they're Republican opinions, but because they're common sense conservative ideas that help navigate this country in a better direction. I want my president to win. I want my president to be effective, regardless of whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. We all should want that, right? That really is what America is all about. If we look in the rearview mirror, history's not going to be kind to somebody of the lack of character of Donald Trump, right? I mean, this is easy stuff if you're just mature enough to step away from that moment in time of the next tweet or the next X or whatever you call it these days. I'm not hip enough to know this. But history's not going to be kind to Donald Trump. The quicker we purge this, and look, if it means working with the other team, so be it. Let's do it, and let's do it well.
Yeah, I know that you're kind of worried about what a Donald Trump, the Donald Trump party means for the future of conservatism and the GOP, but just on a policy level or on a governance level, maybe not on a political level. What's the thing that would worry you most about another Trump term?
I think the reckless foreign policy. I think look, these times are real. As I watch the news play out, yes, we've got these domestic issues, and I think we have massive economic cracks showing just because both Joe Biden and Donald Trump recklessly spent through $8 trillion on Donald Trump's side and $9 trillion and growing on Joe Biden's side. But I think at the end of the day, the way he recklessly operates with foreign policy is a huge danger, and not just to the image and the reputation of America, but to our soldiers and to our very lives. And then we certainly know what the ramifications of foreign policy gaffes are. It then becomes economic, and then becomes trade related. Look, this guy has made no mystery of what he's going to do day one when he gets in there. He's going to be a reckless dictator that simply gravitates towards being 1% more powerful every day he's in office. And to me, this country's too important. The future of my 3 kids is too important to just give the keys to somebody like that just because they have an R next to their name. And by the way, it's a fake R. It's written with a pencil. It's not written with a Sharpie.
I appreciate that. What you mentioned at the top, like the social kind of fallout for you. I am curious. What are the things like? I mean, I assume you had a poker club or something, a group of former Republican state reps you used to hang out with. Are you taking the heat? I know you said that. I think your wife was maybe one time hassled at a grocery store. Like, what's the social fallout been for you?
Yeah, it's probably a lot less than what most folks would think. It's probably 10-1, right? 10-1 now. Early on in the 2020 election, it was the inverse of that. But look, I think most folks realize, look, we need a better pathway forward. We do need a better direction. But yeah, there's certainly some blowback. I mean, I posted a picture of me and my wife with my son on his last baseball game last night, and my wife reminded me this morning to go delete all the comments off of it, just because people playing, mindless games of intimidation and whatnot. But look, it is what it is. I'm truly driven by the fact that doing the right thing will never be the wrong thing, and the right thing is not Donald Trump.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Sometimes I feel like some of these guys get excuses. I think there are threats that are real. Obviously, we just talked to Elizabeth Newman, domestic terror threat expert. There are threats that are real, so I'm not undermining that. But a lot of people, I think, have used it as an excuse to not speak out, because they're not up for the blowback. Okay, I want to end on one fun thing, if you don't mind.
All right,
there's an alternate life for you. There's an alternate world for you where you don't say what you think is true, and you just go along with the nonsense, and you end up on Newsmax with Eric Bolling. And I want to play a little clip from Eric Bolling last night with Christy No.
I've also written a couple of books, and I know how the process works. You write some chapters. You don't write the whole book at once. You write a chapter or two. You send it to the editors, and they edit. They read it. They add. They subtract. And here's my question. The editor, was she possibly a plant, a liberal plant? Because I'm not sure either one of these stories, the dog story, the North Korea story, seems like the Christy Nome I know.
No, the buck always stops with me. I take my own full responsibility.
Good for you, Christy. That's good. There we go. That's the alternate life you could have been leading. Going on Newsmax, hypothesizing about liberal plants inside the publishing industry. This is what's happened to us.
My stock line is, look, I didn't run for office again because it's hard to show up to work and only tell 70% of the truth. In that scenario, it feels like you're only showing up and maybe telling 10% of the truth.
7%.
Yeah, that'd be a little hard to look in the mirror.
That's good. All right. Hey, for those, actually, one more thing. You thought about, you at least were approached, I think, about third party stuff. How do you kind of assess? There are a lot of people out there, conservatives, moderates, who say, maybe not this election, but maybe the right path. The Republican Party is so broken, maybe third party is an option. How did you look at the third party possibility this time, and how do you assess that in the future?
Certainly, there's 70% of America that doesn't like the menu, Biden or Trump, and so that there's never been this kind of polling information before. And I seriously looked at it. I mean, I really thought there was going to be an opportunity in a lane, and there is. But the system is not geared for a third party. I mean, how do you raise $1 billion in a matter of weeks or months, maybe at best? How do you convince 70 or 80 million people to get to know somebody who's relatively a no-namer on the national scene? It just would be too hard to break the strings of gravity. But in a perfect world, it would be a great setup. Have a Republican president, have a Democrat vice president, walk in and stabilize the system for 4 years, and then see what happens. My guess is America would get addicted to that type of leadership.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it would have to maybe be a celebrity, and it would probably not have to be Donald Trump on the ballot. Just the polarization of it makes it too hard. Anyway, Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, thank you so much for coming on the Bulwark Podcast. I appreciate your leadership, and I just want to repeat. I think that it's so important. I'm burned, man. I've been against Trump for 9 years, and I was always a rhino. It's so important to have conservatives of principles who are speaking out and saying, hey, we can survive 4 years of policies we disagree with. We might not be able to survive 4 years of Donald Trump. I thank you for doing that. I appreciate you very much. Please come
Absolutely.
back soon. Geoff Duncan, enjoy suburban Georgia, baseball tournaments, parenting. It's a good life. It's a good life out there, people. He's got a good life. You can do it too. If you're a Republican that knows the right thing, you can do it too. Geoff Duncan's doing great. Thank you very much for coming on the Bulwark Podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with friend of the pod. See you then. Peace.